has become a very close and dear friend of mine as I've gotten to know him over the years. He serves beneficiaries in multiple states, primarily through telesales. He also now is training and mentoring and coaching agents as he's grown his agency well into 7 figures. And he believes not just in helping Medicare beneficiaries find a plan, but in empowering them through education to make sure that they understand why it's the right plan and that it fits. He also is an amazing social media guy. He did a talk not too long ago, Feed the Beast, where he talks about how to get content out crazily. He is an absolute monster at content creation. He has one of the largest Medicare-related Facebook groups out there, just close to 4,000 members. He's a fantastic podcaster. You've probably seen him on the Taco Tuesday podcast. He used to run the Everything Medicare podcast, the Six Figure Medicare Agent podcast, and he's also got his own conference coming up here pretty soon. But all the way from Salt Lake City, Utah, please put your hands together for one of the best young guns in insurance, Mr. Christian Brindle.
So Christian said, that Jeff taught me from 10,000 down to 5,000. Christian said he's going to give away another 5,000 today.
Oh, there you go. Let's go.
Just kidding.
Go big or go home, right?
Listen, man, Christian Brindle has been coming up in the group space. We started communicating as we both had these groups on Facebook, and I think we talk probably once a week right now.
Yeah, pretty regularly.
I just want to go back to your backstory, because a lot of people know you from the group, but you actually are putting content out in a very different way when I discovered you on your podcast, and it was direct to consumer oriented content completely for probably a long period, probably longer than I know. Yeah. Well, let's go back. That's the Everything Medicare Podcast. Right. How many episodes of that have you put out?
So to date, there's about 266 episodes, give or take.
How do you find 266 things to talk about with that?
Well, it's you find ways to recycle topics, and there's certain topics that need to be updated, right? So there's original Medicare content that you can talk about back in 2018 when I started the podcast that probably could be updated for 2021 or 2022. So that's part of it, but it's also just putting as much time in as you can and being creative at trying to come up with topics. So the more content that I personally put out, the biggest challenge that I face is coming up with more topics. But there's a couple different ways to kind of keep it fresh, but you need to put more time into actually thinking about it, because when you have no content, you have a million ideas, and everything's fresh. But
it can be almost overwhelming, like when you start putting out content, how many different ideas you have and which one do I tackle first. So how long ago did you start was that the first big marketing initiative you did digitally?
Yeah. So the Everything Medicare podcast started in 2018. I was living in Florida the year before, came back from Florida, came back to Salt Lake City, and started the podcast because there was only 2 or 3 other podcasts that were about the topic direct to consumer. So I felt like podcasts are getting more popular. Seniors ultimately are the last to the party when it comes to trends like that, but they always get there, right? Like there's people talking to seniors on TikTok right now, and it's working.
Absolutely.
Several people, like Scott Sims is a great example.
Yeah. Sylvia Gordon's doing pretty good on there, and then and there's been, I think Rebecca Davis is doing pretty good on TikTok. I mean, we haven't really figured out TikTok. Facebook, YouTube seem to be our domains, but
Me too.
But that was important. It was like Danielle was talking about going direct to consumer, and a lot of people try to replicate different concepts with groups and agent marketing and influencer stuff. But you went straight out the gate into into direct to consumer marketing. Yeah. Like I did before we had these, other audiences evolve. And I'm guessing, I want to know the details about it, but on the podcast, I'm guessing it's still developing these organic natural leads over time. Yeah. Is it getting more and more over time? When a new episode goes out, is it more, or is it really just like it's dripping from people finding it a little bit more every day?
A bit of both. So there's certainly people that discover it and they'll go back years and they'll start binging episodes and they'll watch 30, 40 new episodes. I've dramatically taken my foot off the gas on that content in the last year or so, but I still try to put out an episode once every so often just to keep it fresh. Yeah. And the new episodes perform super well because there's people that are subscribed on iTunes and Apple Podcasts and these different places, so they get the notification. And we also put the podcast on our second YouTube channel, our direct-to-consumer YouTube channel. So it comes from such a myriad of different ways. But I get reports in my email from our team members every day on kind of what's going on. And I think we had probably 2 people that called in and said they found the podcast since I've been here. Yeah. So I haven't put a podcast out for over a month or 2. So it's certainly something that lives on, and it just continues to bring in people probably every week, if not every other week. Some weeks are more than others, but it's incredible.
Yeah. There's a graph out there somewhere. I wish I had it that I could share with you, but you can probably find it on Google Images. But it talks about different social media platforms and the length or the staying power of the content you put out. Facebook has like the worst staying power. You know, it's very much in the now. It's happening now. You can go back and look at people's stuff, but it takes some work. And when you search for things, it tends to organize them in a way it's like the newest, freshest stuff comes up. But with podcasts, it seems like people are going in there and they're with an intention of I'm wanting to look for a specific topic, and it doesn't really matter if that topic is old. It's kind of more like a YouTube, Google, or Pinterest. Mm-hmm. So I would assume that you would probably get leads off of even an outdated video 5 years down the road still. And somebody said, I can't remember who this was, but they said when you make a YouTube video, the podcast's the same way, that it's an unpaid salesperson that works 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Never sleeps and never asks for a raise. It just keeps on going. But podcasts are that way as well. So, and you went over and when you did your YouTube channel, your direct-to-consumer, and you did something I didn't do and started your agent one, you did start separately.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning that I should have done that because I kept thinking, well, what if I just put double the content on one channel, agent and consumer? But apparently YouTube decided, no, your content's agents now. So even though we put consumer content out for years on the same channel and then started putting some agent stuff on there, the consumer stuff gets suppressed in there probably just from the amount of time an agent will actually watch a video, mostly when you make one with Ron Ray and they'll watch it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Have you seen that on the agent versus the consumer side? Agents will watch something for a much longer period of time.
I definitely have found that. And it's interesting because on the YouTube channel, ideally, I found that growing the agent channel was way easier than growing the consumer channel. Yeah. Partially because I was way better at doing the content by the time I started that channel, and I knew what I was doing a bit more, so that I'm sure that plays a role. I think YouTube, once you're doing what it wants you to do, it's going to push you easier. But if you start off maybe not doing what it wants you to do, it's a little bit harder to gain traction. Doesn't mean you can't. You certainly can, but it starts you off maybe on the wrong legging. So that's what I found in the consumer channel. Now, the consumer channel, it's funny, I put less videos on it than ever the last year, and it's grown. It actually just got monetized like a couple months ago. Really? And we barely started putting out any new content on it. It's funny, the videos that got pushed and that kind of carried the channel since we stopped making content on it, or at least dramatically reduced it, was videos calling out the Medicare commercials.
Oh, yeah.
And people seem to love those. We get 10,000 views, 11,000 views on videos like that. And we were seeing people call into the office like, there was one video that I tracked it specifically. We got over 45 clients just from that one video all over the country. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and pretty sporadic, like as far as where they came from.
Yeah, all over the place.
Yeah.
So it helps that we're licensed in 43 states.
Yeah, and I'm sure if one called from number 44, you'd probably figure out how to get that license and keep on writing. That's how I added it. Everybody says to me and out of the gate, should I get licensed in, how many states should I get licensed in? Should I get licensed in 50 states? I'm like, you should pick up a state every time you need one. And then if you get to the point you got all 50 of them, just keep them renewed,
right,
as you need them. I personally don't going to go out and like shotgun and get everyone. I pick them up as I need them. And I think we are at like 49 now finally. So California is the last one, and I'm really regretting it. I've lost a lot of money recently because I didn't have that one. So the vision on your consumer side, I mean, it's growing organically. The agent side has started to grow. Which one do you enjoy more?
I'd say I definitely enjoy the agent one more.
Yeah.
Partially, I think just because of where I'm at in my career. Like, I sold as an agent for probably 7 or 8 years before I kind of stepped back from personally producing myself. So I mean, and there's some people in this room that have been selling for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Or people that were watching the live stream, they've been selling for 30, 40 years, and they're like, I still love it. I just started to get burnt out on it, and I started to enjoy working with other agents and helping them do maybe what I was able to do in the field as an agent. So it's just maybe a little bit fresher for me at that point in time. But for now, I enjoy that better.
Yeah, so so we found this too. Like, I mean, I sold at a really high level individually, and then we started bringing on a couple of agents, and it's gratifying, but the cool thing about certain agents, and a lot of you in this room, when I've helped them and something's clicked, like Michael Weller came up to me earlier and talked about coming when he came to our office and some things that have clicked, and just tons of people do that, and it's really gratifying because it's a big impact, and we make individual impacts on Medicare consumers, but when you can help another agent go help 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 3,000 people. It's like compounding that impact.
Yeah.
And sometimes recruiting can get like a bad rap because it's done so distastefully. But I think the cool thing about maybe you and I both, we didn't like go after them like trying to mass recruit. We pick up agents that we really want to work with and that really want to work with us, and a higher percentage of those are going to work out. So I think I've seen that in you. You hear all these things about different uplines, and the people that I've communicated with that have worked with you have always been pretty happy with it, your attention to them. But a good part of that is you're not going out and trying to grab so many agents that you can't support them. You just want to pick them up as you can and work with those.
And so I'm still having to do some sales just as kind of like examples, or like, okay, this is how you handle this situation, this is how you handle that situation. But I'd say the amount of time I'm spending writing new business opposed to maybe last year. Like last year I wrote 350 new clients myself, and we had 80 or 90 agents by the end of the year, and I was working 80, 90 hours a week, and I just burnt out by the end of the year. This year, it's not nearly that same level of stress. I'd say I probably have been able to step back 80% from what I was doing.
Yeah,
in terms of
personal production, but I bet you work just as much, if not more. You're just working on things maybe that you enjoy more, and which makes it not feel as stressful.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I feel like I'm always doing something.
Yeah.
You're the same way.
Yeah.
Like you have a hard time turning it off.
Yeah.
So even if I'm at home, like in the evening, I might be like watching a movie.
I know you are, man. I get all these emails, Christian Brindle, Taco Tuesday, all these different, all these lives, all the stuff comes out, and I tell my team.
That's my VA, not me.
I tell all the time, though, I'm like, Christian's putting out, a healthy amount of content, so you definitely bought into quantity of content. And, some people focus so heavily on, trying to have the perfect stuff to put out before they'll even put anything out.
Yeah.
And going into the individual, Medicare, like going into being a consumer directed agent side, there are some people, like you said, that want to do that for forever, and that's great because, like I'll say, my dad did that for a long time, and that's where he wanted to be, and he would turn away like other opportunities and things, and I don't know that if he knew what was possible, if he would have turned those away. But some people, that's what they want to do, and that's what's the most gratifying, and they're, honestly, a great asset to the marketplace. Yeah. A lot of people do have a life where they have a vision of where am I going to get, so I'm going to, like even Jagger was saying, first we had to get on the phones and take these leads, start to close them, build some revenue, and then, eventually, build out of that. Because to get to scale, you can't be working in the personal production. It becomes so tough on you. I was just talking to someone else earlier at lunch who's in that predicament where, they've built this business that's got great revenue and they're making money, but like it's impossible to scale at this point because they're so heavy on service work, and the few new clients aren't maybe even, it's difficult to really get outside of it at some point.
Yeah.
And you can hire admin, but really the best way to scale I see is going LOA. So a lot of people ask me, like, do you hire an admin or do you hire an agent first? And, I'm telling them hire agents first at this point, get the agents going and then get the admin to support those agents for me. But, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat. What would you say?
I mean, just because it's the way that I did it, not that I did it right necessarily, but I started off hiring admins to take the customer support off of my plate.
Yeah.
Because when I started, I was just an individual agent, like a lot of us, right? So I was wearing every hat. I was customer service. I was sales. I was whatever, marketing, right? And the biggest thing that was just overwhelming me, and in my head, I was spending less time bringing new revenue into the business by making sales, because that's where I thought my attention needed to be at that point in time. The admin was able to come in and take the claims and customer service and phone calls off my plate, because there were certain days where I couldn't seem to get anything else done because I was spending so many hours doing that. So I've always thought that maybe hiring an admin would be great, but I understand where you're coming from.
We also can do like hire an admin and have it be a rolling seat where a lot of those admins want to be an LOA agent, and so we can kind of run them into our agent spot, because then I can pull another admin into that spot.
Right.
Sometimes you're going out looking for an agent, then you're finding somebody that maybe not be a fit for an entrepreneur or inside sales concept. Maybe you're looking for an admin, and then they see the potential as they're working through it, and you say, hey, do you want to do this where you're still servicing but selling, and then you can kind of pull that admin back into that spot. That's happened for us a few times for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say a significant portion of my employees now that we hired were admin, and now they're doing very different things than that. Like they've grown and pivoted and taken on so much more than just that initial administration role. So
right. Yeah, and same for us. We've had that same experience to where, someone's job might initially be to answer the phone, talk to clients, those kind of things, but then we start seeing what they can handle.
Yeah.
Right. And like adding tasks to the equation, then we start to really see some talents they have that, hey, I didn't know that they could do that. And now I know, and we can kind of figure out how we can kind of utilize their talents and their strengths.
Yep. Your dad is in your downline.
Yeah.
So I had a dad in the business. He would have never been in my downline. What's that relationship like?
So it's a different situation for sure than probably a lot of people that are second generation like us.
Yeah.
I came in and my dad never wanted me to have anything to do with his business, like his corporation, really. So I came in and he contracted me as an independent agent.
Yeah.
So I was 1099 from the get-go, and I was working a job, working insurance as much as I could, and my goal was to quit the job in 6 months, and I was able to do it in 5, so I was very happy about that. But what happened was, being contracted under my dad, as I started to grow, and especially when I started to work with agents 3 or 4 years ago, we ran into a lot of challenges. Actually, the challenge really started with the Everything Medicare podcast, because we would have clients reach out to us from all over the country, and with certain carriers, you can't get licensed, you can't get appointed in the state unless your entire hierarchy is.
Every entity.
Right. So my dad had MGA contracts, and I wanted to be a GA, I wanted to recruit, I wanted to sell in other states, and it was just constant friction all the time. And what ended up happening was, as a GA, I think at one point as a GA I had about 40 agents. And I quickly learned that I could have qualified for way higher levels and contract levels and things like that. So over time, it just started to make sense. My dad probably has 5 or 6 agents. My dad doesn't really work the business anymore. He kind of just recertifies, maintains his book of business. He's very inactive in the business. He travels a lot, that kind of thing. So my production was greater, my downline was greater, the agents that we were able to work with were greater. So it just made sense for me to be able to slide out under him and get the level above him.
Did you tell him that, or did he tell you that?
I had some help from our friends at the FMO.
Okay, good. That's nice.
Because what was able to sell him on it was he could keep his level, but I could get the one above him that he couldn't get. And so that made sense, and we kind of worked out a different arrangement. We work in the same office, so we worked out an arrangement to where I leased the office from him, so that way he felt like he wasn't losing the revenue off of making overrides off of me, because that's always was our agreement before. He made overrides off of me, and that paid the way, which that worked out pretty well for him with how much business I wrote.
So with lead sources right now, you got the organic content that's coming in. What else are you pouring into mostly? I think you do Facebook.
Yeah.
We've been dogging Facebook, and I did say that blurb. Like, I know some people are successful with it. You were one of those that I think is having some success with Facebook.
We're doing less of it though, so I'm on the same wavelength on that for sure.
I don't feel stupid.
No, I mean, we're doing less of it. We're focusing on trying to do YouTube ads and trying to figure out that whole dynamic with YouTube ads and working on the Google side a little bit. So I'm putting my attention towards that, but we also do branded direct mail in the area
for like inbound phone calls.
Yeah. So we do a drip campaign on branded direct mail. We send 3 pieces out starting 7 months before. I was doing that before I went to behind the agency, but I tweaked the approach once I saw what you guys were doing, and so that I revamped kind of what we were doing. We have a ton of referral partners in Utah. So early on, one thing my dad taught me that I was really good was you want to build relationships with agents in the area. And that's something we're all told, and something that it's very generic information, but we have about 15 different financial planners in Utah that send us referrals. One guy in Salt Lake City last year alone sent us 40 referrals that turned into clients. Just one guy. And then we have PNC agents and things like that. So we have a huge referral base. We buy leads as fillers. So like we'll buy telemarketing leads. We'll buy direct mail leads as fillers. But I'm trying to completely get away from leads and kind of develop things to where either we're generating lead ourselves completely or it's an inbound phone call. So that's really what I'm focused on and concentrating on. But we're very diversified in kind of how we do that.
And it's to develop inbound phone calls, it can be expensive, but the closing ratio and the ease of work, and when you're having inside sales agents, it's much easier to make them happy when they're not having to hardcore prospect, age leads. Johnny is really good at that. I can give him a lot of credit for it, but a lot of people that's a hard road to do things, and some people are exceptional at it, but creating that high quality lead flow helps you create that culture for an inside sales team and staff. And me and you have talked, I know you initially had trouble going through a couple of people for those spots. We think it tends to get easier once the team is there, and their network seems to bring in other people that are like them. Like, we just hired another videographer. Guess who referred him to me? My first videographer, right? So they have those networks that tend to expand, and it makes it easier for us to grow. Plus, when you have that as that team gets bigger, I think those people have confidence when they're coming in that, I do want to do this, and other people are being successful at it. It makes it easier. The hardest few hires are those ones in the beginning. So if you've gotten that done, you're probably starting to be on that road. So, and we talk about that all the time, man. That's we've done a lot of similar things. And so a lot of people probably think we compete, but there's a few Facebook groups that we have our alliance.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, but man, that's awesome. And what do you think? What's your next year's content growth strategy? Where you want to focus your time growing? Obviously, you enjoy the agent side a lot. You have the summit coming up in June.
Yeah.
Where's your attention really at right now, and where are you going to be investing your time and money?
So I think for me going forward, for the moment, I want to put 95% of my time towards working with agents, training agents. I really enjoy doing that. Webinars, videos, those kind of things. I'd love for the YouTube channel to get to 10,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So that's a goal of mine, because I think for a niche channel like ours, that's a pretty big number.
I know. Can you believe you have to have 100,000 YouTube subscribers to get verified?
Yeah, it's
Like
ridiculous.
100,000 in Medicare, it's very hard.
yeah, for sure.
So,
And so that's really going to be my focus. Of course, right now we're planning the summit for 2023. We're getting a venue locked in. We're trying to make arrangements and things like that. So I'm looking ahead to that, and we certainly want it to be bigger, better experience, maybe a bigger city, whatever the case might be, for 2023. So that's a huge focus of mine. And yeah, I think really working with the agents, developing our training platforms, developing the content that we're putting out, that's really where I'm going to be putting my focus in the next 12 to 18 months, because I think we're seeing a ton of growth on that side of the business now. I think I've been able to develop the business now to where the book of business and the clientele is going to continue to grow without me. I might still be needed to manage a couple things here and there, need to generate leads, need to do the marketing, that kind of stuff, but I can concentrate a lot more on working with agents than I ever could before.
absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see Salt Lake. Personally, I like the idea of Salt Lake because I haven't gotten a chance to go there, and I've always heard it's really beautiful. So excited to see you there, man, and appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
All right, guys.